This is late stage boomer, or not, well, almost boomer, very old Gen Xer. But, and my business school professor said to me, is one of the first things he said, our dean, he said, if you plan to use technology, have a plan for when it fails. I'm like, okay, I got a plan. I can't read it, but I got a plan. Ironically, the first question I have to pose to the panel is also the most important. Why is it, do you think, that the Dodgers should win the World Series and the Texas Longhorns should win the national championship?
Because the Cubs aren't in it?
Oh. Fair, but wrong answer. No, okay, we'll pivot. So obviously, if I was to say, give me a definition of social impact, I suspect amongst the four of us, we'd have four different definitions, right? Randy alluded to the fact that, look, you have choices when you choose to provide social impact. You have to navigate those. There's going to be times, and I think probably everyone's experienced this, there's no shortage of people in need or people asking for your support, right? Without unlimited resources, you got to pick your battles. If I ask you that, how you define social impact and how do you make those choices?
So I have to out myself. Pantyhose. I borrowed Ronaldo's 4 children, and I fussed at somebody for wearing tennis shoes 2 days ago. So I'm gonna have to go back and apologize. I feel a little vindicated there. Anyway, so for ACC, and I have notes because I am a baby boomer at 63, going to be 64. Yeah. Anyway, hey Brian. Internship matches, mentorship matches, hiring and retention, development plans, knowledge networks, career progression, and talent pipeline diversity. Looking at bringing people together to move our industry forward. And so the impact for ACUC is, do we have people of color that look like me in the C-suites? Are we making decisions? Do we have CEOs? I have unfortunate facts. The unfortunate fact, we have 450 plus billion-dollar organizations that are credit unions. There are only 10 African Americans that are serving as CEOs. So impact for me, for AACC, is to see more leadership in the C-suite and also to see more people making sure that they are in their communities serving the people that look like them.
And do you approach that, are you planting seeds with the early generations to get them into those, or are you focusing more on, or maybe all of the above?
So we have the internship program, and the young man that I fussed at about having those tennis shoes on, I've really got my hooks in him. But we've got a young professionals network that is phenomenal and growing. And so we're also looking at creating C-level executive training. We've partnered with TrueStage and CUES. We know that CUES does it best, and so they're the graduate school. We have what I call a university level program that shows you how to be an executive. Most times people of color don't have the opportunities to go to these schools or to get the tutoring that they need. And so at AACC, we're developing programs that do that. And I have, Zach's been through the program, and I think he thinks it was pretty good.
That's awesome. So Erica, you've changed your hair a little bit, but.
I have. A little shorter now. No, it's great to be back at the Underground, so thanks for having me in lieu of Erica. And I, along with you all, will have my notes as well, too. But I think first and foremost, it's kind of two different columns. First of all, it's the business side of the house, right? At Origence, we gauge our commitment to community by ensuring that we are helping our credit unions meet the members where they are on the business side of the house, but then also out in the community, right? And so we want to make sure that we're enabling them first and foremost to do their jobs well, and quickly and easy, and everything that we are producing, is it helping to streamline that process for their operations and for actually getting the work done so they can be out in the community. And like you were talking this morning, Keith, I think being out in the community is so vital. I love coming in or turning on my computer in the morning. I'm not going to the office, but turning on the computer in the morning and seeing our company chat pop up, and everyone talking about how amazing the culture is at Origins because we're out in the community. And so especially this month, with breast cancer awareness, we're doing walks, we're out in the community, we're doing that. But again, we're pulling alongside our credit unions to be out there doing it as well as ourselves. So we're trying to lead that force. So again, across the board, it just really, really important to be out and about and ensure that they're seeing us and that we're being part of that. And picking and choosing. I think probably our biggest bow, if you will, on our lapel is our relationship with CMNH hospitals. And that's truly how we are able to really be part of the community. Our biggest event that we do is our wine auction, which many of you are at and are part of, and so thank you for that. But last year we were able to raise $1.8 million. The event in and of itself is great and it's amazing, but it's really not about that. It's about all the hospitals back in the communities that are receiving those funds, so that when our credit unions are out, they're more than just a financial institution. They are part of the families. They are helping to save children. They're helping to save those. So we love our relationship with CMNH. I think combined, and again, I'm not here to toot our own horn, but collectively together, we have raised over $16 million for CMNH since 2006. So to help, and that's helping, right? That's being out there and being part of that. So I think that's a big piece across the board, and that's really how we measure it across the board.
You raised a great point. And I think it bears pointing out again is that it doesn't have to be just about us providing the social impact directly. It can be us leveraging our resources to amplify impact through others, right?
Exactly. Like Brandy said this morning, when she was out in Africa trying to find the right pieces to buy, like she connected with people across the U.S. to do that for her. She got to the airport, she picked it up, and she took it and ran. So it's not all just about us, it's about helping everyone else around us.
Tom, what do you think?
Actually, I'll follow up with the comment you just made, because as a president of a league, the credit union industry does not, although sometimes I think it seem like this, we don't exist for leagues, right? We exist for members, and members belong to credit unions, and credit unions are our members. So that's the key thing for us, is trying to figure out how, first of all, we want to be able to put credit unions in a position to be able to survive, first of all. And so that's a lot of what we end up focusing on is at the state level. We have a lot of state chartered credit unions in Illinois, so that's a big deal for us. But also at the federal level, you were describing before, the bad that can come. I mean, you'd like to be in a position to be able to focus on more positive things and see, the powers of credit unions expanded. But unfortunately, in the environment we've been in, it's been much more of a defensive battle. So our big thing is to be able to protect credit unions as much as possible, so that they can do the social impact in their communities. And the big thing then, because not only do I run the league, I run a service corporation as well, and our focus very much is on smaller credit unions, both on the league but on our side as well. And a lot of it has to do with survivability. Certainly credit unions are thriving as an industry, but when you take a look at the kind of the categorization or stratifications, the biggest credit unions are doing great. And the next level, maybe not quite as much. And then when you get down to those under $100 million, that's where you're seeing, a lot of the struggles that are going on from a membership, just from a survivability. So our big thing as much as possible, and I know that's going to be a big topic for this afternoon, is how do we as an industry stay together? Because I will tell you, when I go to Washington, when I go to Springfield and talk to legislators, there'll be some big credit unions that come along, but the stories that we tell are the stories, of those smaller credit unions and the impact that they've made, because that's the differentiation between the banks. Because I hear a fair amount The big credit unions are just like banks, but the smaller and mid-sized ones are the. So those are the stories we like to tell. So it's just important that this industry continue to stay together. That as much as possible we work to keep the smaller credit unions and mid-sized credit unions viable, and forces, because they do make a huge social impact in their communities.
Good point.
Ooh, let me say something.
Please.
So, to the big credit unions, I have personal knowledge that Connecticut and Schools First, they act like they're small credit unions. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. And I want to say, you say put your money where your mouth is, or your support. Everybody on this stage supports ACC as a corporate partner. Thank you. Truly, thank you.
So, because the next question kind of speaks a little bit to advocacy, I'll start up with you, Tom. But, we use the social impact argument when we go to Washington, when we go to state capitals, to demonstrate the value of our tax exemption. There's a big tax battle coming up. It's going to be pretty nasty. We'll be on the table again, as we always are, and there's a certain lobby that's going to make sure that they know about us. Are we doing enough? Are we doing enough? Are we telling the right message?
I don't know if it's the case where you can ever do enough, and it's one of those things where it has never come up so that people can get kind of complacent about it. But to your point, the environment has changed, and we certainly in Illinois are familiar with the concept of slipping something into a bill at the last minute without any sort of guidance on that. That's how we got CRA a couple years ago. That's how we got the wonderful Interchange Reduction Act, that Prohibition Act. All I'm hoping to do is get taxation, and I'll have I'm going to have the Triple Crown there. I'm going to have a hat trick of bad legislation. But I don't think you can ever do enough to prevent that. And there's a lot of different forces that are going on, because it's not just those other lobbyists that are working at it. There's people in the government that are actively working on that. I mean, I think the CFPB would love to see more regulation of credit unions, and maybe not the taxation thing directly, but certainly more control over all that. So I do think that is a concern for next year. Government's going to be looking for, we always describe, they're going to be looking for change in the cushions. They're going to be looking for money wherever they can get it, and credit unions will be a convenient place to look for it, and certainly there's going to be a lot of call for that kind of thing. I think the biggest defense, though, is just do what you're supposed to be doing. If credit unions do what, as like what your credit union does, legislators see that, they hear about that. You remarked before, tell those stories. If all credit unions were to do that, I wouldn't hear that comment about, well, big credit unions are just like banks kind of thing.
What do you think, Erica?
Yeah, not on the legislation piece. I'll leave that to you guys. I think what we had talked about earlier too was, where are we missing the mark in really working with our communities across the board. And so I think that's for me. I think we like to focus on more of the opportunities that we see, and you spoke about it earlier, Keith, too, on just financial education and financial literacy, and across the board in our communities. And so, how do we help our credit unions educate their members in such a way that we see that push through all the way through. So we see it coming back around. We see them making the wise decisions, the wise choices. We see them, an educated person is an empowered person. Whenever we are coming together and we know something about a topic, or we just have gone through a class and we want to encourage everyone else, we tell everyone, we bring them aboard, we bring them in with us, right? And so that we become empowered. And so I think that is such an important piece of building that community, is not only financially, educating them and creating that buzz around the credit union and bringing them in, but again, seeing that through all the way through so that they are making those wise choices. And again, they're making building great communities because they're making those good choices.
What do you think, Renee? Are we doing enough? We telling the story?
I want to keep the glass half full. So I don't think we're falling short. I think that we're just moving slow. We're sluggish. And so what I'd like to see us do is I'd like to see us turn the notch up a little bit. I'd like for us to remember, those of us, I'm dating myself, those of us who remember the 8-track player. For those of you who remember that, we need to step it up. And so I think in terms of the advocacy piece, if we as a credit union movement came together, America's credit unions leading us, leading the leagues, everybody coming together and agreeing that we have to save our small credit unions, but we all under 100 million, but we also have to be in step with one another. And until we do that, we're not going to find success.
Yeah, that's fair. That's another secret fear of mine, is that and I could be off base, I don't know, but it feels like we're losing a little bit of our collaborative spirit. Right? Like everyone's kind of wrapped up in their own problems, and trust me, I got problems. But it just feels like we're not as available maybe as we once were. And that's a real shame, because when I got into the business almost 25 years ago, coming from a for-profit world, and in that case a startup world, I was going like, what do you mean I can call up such and such a credit union and then they'll kind of open the kimono for me and tell me exactly what they're doing? I mean, what do you mean? I mean, it blew my mind. And then the more I experienced it, the more kind of, I had a little sip of the Kool-Aid, and then I had a great big gulp of it. 25 years later, I can't imagine being anywhere else, but it just feels like we're losing maybe a little bit of that.
I think that we're at the underground. So my challenge would be for all of us to drink the Kool-Aid again. Go back and drink the Kool-Aid and bring somebody with you. Each one bring one. Drink the Kool-Aid again.
I like that. I like that. All right, so I'm going to pivot into the final question the final piece on the script, Zach. So, and then we're gonna ad lib it. What else could we be doing? What are the opportunities? You alluded to this. Where do you see, hey, you know what? Credit unions could lead in this. We could lean in and be a leader in this area.
Thank you for asking me that, Keith. Small credit unions under 100 million, the first week of April. I'm getting together anybody who says they want to solve for small credit unions. I'm tired of us talking about it. I say that we take 3 days in Atlanta and we make it work. Navy Federal is on board to be a sponsor. MasterCard's on board to be a sponsor. I say let's get it done. So I'm going to need 10 small credit union CEOs to show up. If you're interested, let me know. But the rest of you are welcome to come. It's going to be 50 people. Ronaldo's going to be there to help out. Shirley's going to be there to help out. Tanya's going to be there to help out. And I'm hoping that Sue will come to manage us. But I think that's what we need to do.
Okay, awesome.
Well, opportunities, I think I'll go back to, we were at Reach this week. I think many of us were at Reach, and they had their competition where they were bringing in different employees from credit unions and pitching their ideas to the panel of judges. And I'd say probably over half of them, if not more, were all based on financial literacy and education across the board. So I think that's a big opportunity for us to be out there in the communities, really educating them and really showing them those wise decisions and what they can do. I think it goes back to what Tony Botel, our CEO, who everyone loves and knows, he always says, we go where credit unions go. And so as a B2B company, as someone who is on this side of it, we go where you go, and we want to be part of it. We want to be part of you. So our opportunity, I think, is to pull alongside each other and really collaborate across the board. So.
The people that won the award prize, they're here.
Oh, nice.
They're over there.
Oh, woohoo! Nice.
Stand to be recognized.
It was amazing.
I would go with the awareness and the understand, or just consumers knowing about credit unions. And we went through this whole with America's Credit Unions kind of leading the Open Your Eyes campaign, which spent a lot of money and I think probably moved the needle a little bit, but it really hasn't. And there's an entire, we were talking about the different generations. The younger people and then my kids, I would throw them in this mix, absolutely they love the idea of a credit union. They love the concept, they love the mission, and there's all sorts of people that want to do something like that. They don't even know that credit unions even exist. And that's, how do we get that to change? I mean, one of the things that we started a couple years ago was this, I love my credit union day, because I was like, okay, you spent a bunch of money with this Open Your Eyes thing. I don't know how much people even did it. This is a free way of doing it to try to get that. How do you get that message expanded out there about it? We started something we called See You Kind Day in Illinois. That's now being done in seven different leagues. And on a single day, people doing things in their communities, things that they were already doing anyway, but trying to then get some publicity around it, some notice to it, because the consumers in the world and the consumers in the U.S. love the notion of a credit union. They just don't even know that they're there. Part of that too is the technology, the simplicity and all that kind of stuff that's not there yet. So I think that's another big thing that you have to figure out how to get there to make it easy for people to join and do business with a credit union.
I'm not 100% sure it's just the kids that don't know what a credit union is. The next boomer and or my generation member that walks up and says, hey, you're my bank, that's awesome. It makes me, I want to pull my hair out, but what little I have left. So that idea behind how do you tell the credit union difference? And it's not an easy story to tell. It's not an elevator pitch, right? I've got to get somebody's attention for a good 90 seconds before I can really explain it, right? And look, you don't get 90 seconds today. You get like 10. How long is a TikTok? I'm not on TikTok. Was it about like 10 minutes or 10 seconds?
Ronaldo's children.
Yeah, okay. You notice everyone up here has a piece of paper in their hands, right? So I think it's a powerful message. It's a beautiful message, but it's one that I haven't cracked the code on how we tell it succinctly in the amount of mind share that folks are allowing us. To know us is to love us, but God, it takes a little while for you need to know us.
Maybe we do a TikTok challenge on loving your credit union.
You do not want to see that.
Nah,
Well, what's happening then is other people are shaping the message for us, which isn't great, right? That message is not good. And it's even coming at the government level. I mean, I know in California where you're at, there's all sorts of, messaging that's being talked about, related to fees and other things, but certainly at the federal level too. So other people are shaping that message. So we need to figure out how to get that reversed.
yeah, and I think that kind of speaks again to, are we doing enough on kind of promoting that credit union difference? Because when we get to Capitol Hill, when we get to the state legislatures, we have the 90 seconds, right? But they want the stories, they want the data. They're interested in hearing from me. They're really interested in hearing from their constituency. And so it's, activating your members and getting them, this emotional connection, this thing we used to have with our members kind of when we were like single employer, that emotional connection. They knew that we were their credit union. We were Hughes Aircraft Employees Credit Union. They knew that. Now that we've kind of broadened and we serve pretty much all of Southern California, so that creating that emotional connection again is I think, if I had a second challenge, it would be how do we figure out that piece of it? Because a lot of these discussions get easier when your members are rabid.
How many of you think of your credit union as my credit union? Show of hands. That's not enough. We need to think of our credit unions as my credit union. I have 3. My credit union.
3.
I have 3.
Yeah, so you got to put an S on that. Look, we're getting the hook. Look at that. We managed to fill the entire amount of time. Awesome. Thank you, guys. That was great.
If you guys are open to it, then I would love to have some Q&A from the room. I've already had a couple people kind of elbow me going, I need to ask this panel a question. But before I run over to one of the first ones, when my son was on stage recently, I'm going to come right in here just because there's light, not because I want to cover your faces, yes? When my son was on stage recently, somebody in the audience said, how do we reach out to this next generation? And they're like, do we create TikTok videos? And he's like, what do you mean? Are you going to do a little dance and then say something about credit unions? And they were like, I mean, so it also is a matter of creating relevant content and getting out there as well, right? We don't need preteens making fun of us because they make fun of me enough already, right? All right, I do have a question over here. Are you guys up for it? All right, let's go.
Hi, I'm Deja from Boulder Dam Credit Union. I have a quick question about making an impact. How would that relate when your executive or your board and the employees, there's a disconnect? Because at that point, that impacts your membership. If they don't get along, or if we don't have a unified message, how do we sell that to the community?
You get Brandy to come and do strategic planning. And then after that, seriously, then after that, you could still be the leader. Renato was talking about training his kids up. You can be the leader. You can be the example. Oftentimes, in the early days of ACUC, the board, the safe space, the board wasn't that great. They got better with time. It took time. And I believe in prayer. So pray a lot.
It is a challenge. I mean, there's this phrase called managing up, in which you know, your manager is maybe not great or whatever, and they have to kind of not know that you're doing this too, but to get them to get on board on something that maybe otherwise they wouldn't necessarily think of themselves. I mean, it can be difficult. It can be really frustrating. And I talk to a young professionals group that we have, and eventually what I just tell them, if you can't figure it out where you're at, go someplace else. I know that's a tough message, but sometimes you just can't. There's a phrase that I use, that I've heard, people don't quit companies, they quit people. And I've done that myself, where I really liked the place I worked with, and I could not figure out how to get around what you're describing. And there are other credit unions. I hate, I don't want to sit there and tell people just to give up and leave, but at some point, that's maybe the only way.
Yeah, I kind of explained my philosophy on it, and it seems to work for us. It's ground up, right? The employees drive it. It's so much more effective when they're passionate about something, and then we jump in with them. As a leader, your responsibility then is to encourage that, to create the safe space to do it, and then to show up, right? To participate and celebrate when they actually do that. But if there is a disconnect and it can't be solved, then I'm leaning this way.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, Keith, what you said earlier too. Like in marketing, we're always telling our story. We're trying to tell our story, but I think the same goes for internal. Like telling the stories, and especially when you're getting those employees who are involved out in the community, and you're coming back and you're sharing those stories, they have no choice but to see the impact that they can make and how much better it can move the needle for them. So I think we need to get better internally at telling our own stories as well too.
I've got more questions. I pop up on all sides of you guys.
All right. So 90% of the credit union employees are so busy, right? They are clicking around, sitting attached to their chairs. They don't have time. And they are the biggest champions, right? You have a lot of people who can talk about the credit union. What do you think the credit union leaders should be doing to kind of get them out of that chair and kind of take off that mundane work that they are doing, right? And I've been personally working with a lot of the credit union, with their employees, and they are so busy every day, every hour.
I think AI is going to help with that. once we figure out what parts of AI we want to implement in our credit unions. I don't have the experience that my credit union's too busy for me, so I think I call into a lot of great call centers. It might be training as well. What does customer service look like now in this new age? So
I think particularly among small credit unions where they just, people wear a bunch of different hats, it's really a challenge. I do think, to your point, not just AI, but just other technologies that people can, because they often end up doing a lot of very manual, very repetitive kinds of things. And whatever technology things that you can end up, a technology background. So I'm used to doing this all the time, looking at a business problem and trying to apply a technological solution. And I think a lot of credit unions are just behind on all that. I mean, I think there's been a massive scramble, particularly since the pandemic forced a lot of credit unions to put in all sorts of systems and things. There's a massive catch-up that's being done, but I think that ends up being one of the only solutions is to apply some technology.
If it's important enough, you make time, right? And it's incumbent upon a leader to give your employees space to, if it's important, then you got to give them time to do it. Like, we'll give all our employees a day off with pay to go do something in the community. It's a small step, but it's a step, right? In demonstrating, hey, we view this as important. And if it's important enough, you make time.
Last question.
We're at an underground, so this is going to be a good one. I've now been in the credit union industry, both as a credit union employee and as a partner employee for 25 years. And I've heard the exact same question asked since I was 18 years old, and that is, we're doing enough, and why isn't our story getting out there? As credit unions, I think we've done a really phenomenal job for decades now, of financial education and support within the systems that exist. My question to you is it time to challenge the system on behalf of our communities?
absolutely. Come join us the first week of April in Atlanta.
There is, one of the things that I think happens is because I see a lot of different credit unions, and they're all, a lot of them are doing some great things. There's not a lot of collaboration though in that. There's no scale to that though. So a credit union's doing this over here, somebody's doing something over there, and there's very little of combined messaging of that, because no matter what, you can take some of the biggest credit unions in the country and it's still like a regional or small bank or medium-sized bank, and so those banks can have a much bigger impact because of their size, and so this is all being spread out across on a very small scale of what's happening. So somehow pulling all that together, and that really was the attempt of that Open Your Eyes thing, is to try to, and so there's no way I'm going to recommend let's do a national campaign again, but somehow if the leagues or somebody who can pull these messages together in some sort of, like I said, that's what we tried to do with the I Love My Credit Union Day or the See You Kind Day, try to pull these disparate things together into a single day or a single message that can be amplified then, as opposed to this credit union's doing something on this day and 2 weeks later somebody else is doing something, and they're all reaching their very small audiences, but it doesn't scale up really.
Didn't your mom say that today's the Thriller Day? And
Yes.
all these people around the world are going
I
to do
feel like
something?
you're setting me up for something, Renee.
I just think that we're at the underground, and I think that the underground should have a challenge, and we should pick a date and time, and everybody literally hold hands and be all about the credit unions.
Revolt. Well,
Yeah.
we're also talking about cuss this afternoon too.
Okay. All right,
So-
I'll wait.
Yeah, I don't have the answer first off, but I wonder, so we've tried doing it at a kind of a global level as an industry a number of times. It wasn't just Open Your Eyes, there was a couple of more before that, with equal results. So I wonder if this top-down macro united message is the right way to do, or is it really a grassroots thing, right? Is it our people telling the story consistently over time and getting our members to repeat that story with their friends and family, right? I don't know exactly how that gets done, but I wonder if that's not a different approach that we can take. One of the things I do know, if you don't ask your members to do something nice for you, some will, most won't take the time to do it. You know, if you say, hey, would you mind giving us a review on Yelp or Google? It's amazing how many more reviews you'll get on those two platforms, right? So I'm curious that if we engage them in telling the credit union story, if we'd have any success with that.
Thank you. Let's give them a big round of applause.